Welcome to the Battleline USA. If you're passionate about military history, geopolitics, and the real front lines of today's most critical conflicts, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss our deep dive breakdowns. Today we unravel one of the most explosive developments of 2025, the Israel-Iran conflict and the mounting role of the United States. What began as a calculated Israeli airstrike has now escalated into a regional powder keg with the world's most powerful military, the U.S., positioned at the heart of it. Let's unpack the whole story. For decades, tensions between Israel and Iran have simmered just beneath the surface of Middle Eastern geopolitics. But this conflict isn't just religious or territorial. It's about dominance, ideology, and survival. Iran, a Shia-majority nation and regional power, has long positioned itself as the defender of Palestinian rights and the archenemy of Israel. Its influence spreads through a vast network of proxies: Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and Shia militias across Iraq and Syria. Israel, on the other hand, has repeatedly warned that it will never tolerate an Iranian nuclear weapon or allow Tehran to build a military ring around it. The two nations have clashed indirectly for years through cyber attacks, assassinations, drone strikes, and shadow wars in Syria. But things escalated rapidly in early 2025. After Iran's uranium enrichment crossed the 90% threshold, Israel viewed this as a red line being crossed. On June 13th, Israeli F-35I stealth jets launched a surprise air campaign that targeted Iranian nuclear facilities at Natanz, Iraq, and Fordow. The explosions lit up the skies, sending shockwaves through the international community. For the first time, Israel had gone beyond sabotage or covert missions. It had openly attacked Iranian soil. Iran's retaliation was swift and fierce. Within hours, it fired over 200 ballistic and cruise missiles into Israeli airspace, most of which were intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome, David Sling, and Arrow 3 defense systems. But some managed to land, causing significant damage in Tel Aviv and Haifa. Iran also activated its regional proxy network. Hezbollah launched thousands of rockets from Lebanon, opening a northern front. In Gaza, Hamas began coordinated artillery barrages. Shia militias in Iraq targeted U.S. bases with drones. The entire region had plunged into a multi-front war. Iranian state television declared a defensive jihad and promised to continue the fight until Israel was crippled militarily. The Israeli government responded by declaring a national emergency and calling up 300,000 reservists. The skies above the Middle East became crowded with warplanes, drones, and missile interceptors. Oil prices skyrocketed, markets tumbled, and nations began evacuating embassies from Tel Aviv, Tehran, and Baghdad. But amid all this chaos, one looming question dominated headlines worldwide. What will the United States do? Initially, the United States tried to project restraint. President Trump, in a televised address, urged all parties to exercise caution and labeled the Israeli strikes as a defensive reaction to existential threats. Behind the scenes, however, the Pentagon had already activated contingency plans. American intelligence agencies began feeding satellite data to Israel, and military assets were quietly repositioned. Within 48 hours, the USS Carl Vinson and USS Abraham Lincoln carrier strike groups were deployed to the eastern Mediterranean and the Persian Gulf. Destroyers equipped with Aegis missile defense systems took positions near Israel's coast and Bahrain. American bases in Al Udeid, Qatar, Incirlik, Turkey, and Al Tafra, UAE, went on red alert. Airfields buzzed with activity. F-22 Raptors, B-1 bombers, and MQ-9 Reaper drones began high-altitude patrols over the Red Sea and Iraq. The U.S. wasn't just watching anymore. It was setting the stage for deeper involvement. While bombs fell and missiles flew, another battle unfolded in cyberspace. U.S. Cyber Command, working in tandem with Israel's Unit 8200, began launching offensive operations targeting Iranian air defense radars, missile coordination systems, and power grids. Though publicly denied, evidence points to American software being used to cripple Iran's retaliatory capacity. Meanwhile, intelligence sharing went into overdrive. Through the NATO Link 16 system, Israeli jets gained real-time targeting data from U.S. satellites. Global Hawk drones surveilled Iranian airspace from 70,000 feet, feeding ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, data directly to CENTCOM in Tampa, Florida. Israel's precision strikes on Iranian underground sites were only possible with this unmatched intelligence backbone. In effect, America became Israel's eyes and ears. Soon, U.S. involvement stopped being covert. President Trump, in a second statement, declared Iran a direct threat to regional peace and warned that if Iran crossed certain red lines, such as attacking U.S. troops or attempting a nuclear breakout, swift and overwhelming force would be used. Congress erupted in debate. Hawks like Senator Tom Cotton and Representative Dan Crenshaw rallied support for joint strikes, calling this a historic chance to dismantle Iran's military infrastructure. Meanwhile, opponents like Senator Bernie Sanders and Rand Paul warned against being dragged into another endless war in the Middle East. Protests erupted in major cities. While many Americans supported defensive aid to Israel, polls showed deep division on direct involvement. 47% supported logistical support only. 29% were in favor of direct strikes if U.S. troops were attacked, and 24% opposed any involvement altogether. The War Powers Act was reintroduced, demanding that Congress approve any future offensive actions. By late June, the situation had escalated to its most dangerous level in decades. Iranian-backed militias launched suicide drone strikes on U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria, killing several soldiers. This triggered U.S. counterstrikes on Iranian Quds Force targets in Baghdad and Aleppo. Iran responded by threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz, through which 30% of the world's oil flows. U.S. naval assets began rehearsing convoy escort operations, recalling scenes from the tanker war of the 1980s. Back home, America prepared for the worst. Thousands of troops were deployed to the region under Operation Sentinel Shield. Embassy evacuations in Beirut, Baghdad, and Damascus were ordered. National Guard units in New York and California were placed on standby to protect against potential cyber retaliation. Every move hinted at a slow, creeping slide into a direct U.S.-Iran war. As the fighting intensifies, America is no longer acting in defense alone. It's gearing up for sustained operations. Military transport aircraft like C-17 Globemasters and KC-135 tankers are flying around the clock, airlifting munitions, fuel, and personnel to frontline bases. U.S. arms deliveries to Israel have tripled in volume, including bunker-buster bombs, Patriot missile resupplies, and precision-guided artillery shells. Meanwhile, the Pentagon has initiated what's being called Iron Posture, a strategy of regional dominance to deter Iranian aggression and project power across the Middle East. This includes deploying THEAD, Terminal High-Altitude Area Defense Systems, to Saudi Arabia and Jordan, pre-positioning Marine Expeditionary Units aboard amphibious assault ships in the Red Sea, enhancing the cyber alert level at Fort Meade and U.S. Cyber Command, stationing elite Delta Force and DevGru teams in Cyprus and Qatar for hostage rescue and sabotage operations. The CENTCOM headquarters is now operating in full war mode, monitoring 24/7 battle telemetry. In short, America isn't just supporting Israel, it is preparing for the potential of direct and prolonged conflict with Iran. While the U.S. military gears up abroad, internal debates grow sharper at home. In Congress, a fierce war of words has erupted between pro-intervention hawks and anti-war voices. President Trump has called on lawmakers to stand by our greatest ally, pushing for a war authorization resolution to support a potential limited campaign against Iranian Revolutionary Guard sites. Opposition lawmakers, however, are warning of a constitutional crisis. Senator Elizabeth Warren has accused the White House of marching us toward war without debate. Anti-war protests have filled the streets of Washington, D.C., New York, and Chicago, echoing the public sentiment seen during the Iraq War era. Within the military itself, officers and veterans are raising concerns. Some argue that stretching the U.S. across multiple active theaters, from Ukraine to the Taiwan Strait to the Middle East, is unsustainable. Others say that failure to act decisively now will allow Iran to dominate the region and threaten long-term American interests. There is also growing anxiety over U.S. troops deployed abroad. Families are demanding answers about troop safety and mission objectives. The debate isn't just about politics anymore. It's about the soul of American foreign policy. The U.S. involvement in this war is not taking place in a vacuum. It's sending shockwaves across the globe. Russia has condemned U.S. actions as escalatory and reckless, deploying hypersonic-capable frigates to the Mediterranean in response. China, watching closely from the sidelines, has warned against unilateral aggression and offered to mediate between Iran and Israel, hoping to boost its diplomatic clout. Meanwhile, the European Union is in a bind. While many leaders support Israel's right to self-defense, they fear a prolonged war could trigger a new refugee crisis, disrupt oil supplies, and provoke terrorist reprisals on European soil. France and Germany have called for immediate ceasefires, but without U.S. leadership, diplomatic efforts are falling flat. Oil prices have soared above $130 per barrel, and inflation is rising globally. Shipping through the Strait of Hormuz is down 40%, prompting emergency meetings in OPEC. The world economy is feeling the pressure of a conflict that just weeks ago was thought unlikely. And looming behind it all is the possibility that one miscalculation, one missile too far, one strike too close, could ignite a wider war involving Russia, China, NATO, or even nuclear posturing. The United States, by choosing to step in, now carries the burden of managing the peace or fighting the next war. While the U.S. military takes center stage, a hidden layer of warfare is being fought by private military contractors, PMCs, and intelligence-backed units. Defense firms like DynCorp and Academy, formerly Blackwater, have been quietly awarded emergency contracts to assist with logistics, satellite intel relay, and perimeter base security in Iraq, Jordan, and the UAE. These contractors are not subject to the same oversight as U.S. forces and are being used to fill the gaps where troop presence might cause political backlash. They're training Israeli and Kurdish special forces in urban warfare and asymmetrical response tactics, especially useful in countering Iran's Quds Force and proxy groups. In addition, reports from credible sources suggest that former Navy SEALs and Delta Force operators, now working under contract, are helping to coordinate behind enemy lines sabotage missions in southern Syria and western Iran. These covert operations are expanding the U.S. footprint. The U.S. is not operating in a vacuum. Its network of bases across the Middle East has become the backbone of this conflict. The Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, one of the largest U.S. air bases outside the continental U.S., is hosting strategic bombers like the B-52 Stratofortress and the RQ-170 Sentinel stealth drones. Incirlik Air Base in Turkey, once dormant due to diplomatic friction, is now playing a key role in logistics and electronic warfare coordination. From Al Dhafra in the UAE, U.S. F-22 Raptors are conducting high-altitude recon and deterrence flights, while Kuwait's Ali Al Salem base is launching refueling and surveillance missions daily. Jordan has opened air corridors for U.S. drones and humanitarian airlifts, showing that American military diplomacy has gone into high gear. These bases form an unspoken iron ring around Iran, projecting deterrence and combat power simultaneously. Beneath the battlefield lies the intelligence war. The CIA-Mossad axis is operating at full capacity. It is widely believed that Mossad has been running deep cover agents in Iran for months, gathering data on nuclear sites, underground military bunkers, and IRGC movements. Some of the Israeli airstrikes were reportedly guided by live telemetry from CIA satellites, field agents using laser targeting. Meanwhile, the CIA has reactivated dormant networks in Iraq and Afghanistan to monitor Iranian proxy activities. Cyber teams operating out of Langley and Fort Meade are working alongside Unit 8200, Israel's cyber division, to penetrate Iranian banking, communications, and logistics systems, crippling supply chains for missile production, arms transfer to Hezbollah. This is a new era of digital warfare. The first shots aren't fired with rifles, but with code, malware, covert assassinations. The elephant in the room is nuclear escalation. Both Israel and Iran have avoided using the nuclear word publicly. But behind closed doors, the scenario is being modeled extensively in Pentagon war rooms. Israel maintains a nuclear arsenal of over 80 warheads, kept in submarines, missile silos, and air-based platforms. Though never officially confirmed, it's an open secret. U.S. forces in the region have quietly activated DEFCON 3 readiness for certain bases, meaning they're one step away from preparing for active combat with strategic forces. There's growing concern that if Iran's command structure, this war is rewriting the rules of modern combat with the integration of AI, drones, and robotics. The U.S. has deployed autonomous drone swarms capable of ISR, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, target acquisition, and even offensive actions. These AI-driven systems are being tested in real time, with learning algorithms adapting to Iranian jamming and decoy tactics. Meanwhile, loitering munitions, often called kamikaze drones, are being launched from mobile U.S. units in Iraq to strike high-value targets in Iran with zero human intervention beyond initial programming. Israel's defense tech firms, working closely with U.S. companies like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, are rapidly integrating American AI fire control systems with Israeli Iron Dome batteries, increasing intercept success rates against supersonic cruise missiles. This collaboration may become the blueprint for future NATO air defense systems. The war has also sparked an economic and industrial mobilization on both sides. The U.S. Department of Defense has greenlit emergency defense production orders, activating key military suppliers in Texas, Arizona, and Virginia. Factories are now operating 24/7 to produce Iron Dome interceptors, JDAM kits, bunker buster bombs, and F-35 parts. A new agreement allows U.S. weapons engineers to work directly within Israeli defense facilities, bypassing export restrictions. American companies are also supplying satellite communication equipment, autonomous vehicle platforms, and even experimental battlefield AI tools that were still in testing last year. This war, while tragic, warfare partnerships and shifting military-industrial policy toward joint development and global arms rebalancing. The Israel-Iran war has grown beyond a localized crisis. With U.S. military, intelligence, industry, and politics fully engaged, the war is now a defining challenge of American global leadership in the post-Afghanistan, post-Ukraine era. What started as a surgical strike has become a testing ground for the future of warfare, diplomacy, and national will. Whether the U.S. emerges as a stabilizing superpower or finds itself dragged into another endless war depends on decisions being made today in war rooms and back channels around the globe. The world watches, the Middle East burns, and America stands once more at the edge of war. This is Battleline USA. You just heard the full breakdown of how a regional war became a global crisis and how the United States finds itself once again on the front lines of history. If you found this video informative, give it a like, drop a comment with your thoughts on U.S. involvement, and make sure to subscribe for more in-depth war analysis. Until next time, stay sharp, stay informed, and never forget, the battle line is always moving.